I don't think Bailey's going to be home before we're done, which actually is like the main concern, because with the door open, they have no interest in being here.
Yeah, I've got to I'm probably going to have to like let Eric come in and get her because she'll probably freak out when Eric gets home. But she like kept trying to paw the fucking door down. So
Love it. Love it.
Also, I'm like gonna talk about it obviously in the podcast, but can we fucking like I almost don't even want to do the tarot scope because I got fucking strength for Leo.
Oh, cool. Yeah, cool. Oh, that's so neat for them.
I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I drew their card for them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, oh, will they even notice? You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah. Also, did you see that we have a new like Fran? We have a new person emailed us.
oh wait,
Kate.
no.
Yeah, so Kate from Montana.
Love her.
Yeah, she emailed us because and it's Kate Kait, which is extra cool. She found us through our Fiddle Leaf Fig episode from about 10 million years ago.
Oh, neato.
Because her Fiddle Leaf Fig isn't doing well. And she sent me photos. I'm like, I hope I'm wrong. I think she has spider mites.
Oh, not the damn spider mites.
I was like, so if that's not dust that I'm seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oopsie poopsie.
They're the worst, but they're also kind of unavoidable if you have a bunch of houseplants and you like don't live in fucking the tropics. Right. I mean, even if you do live in the tropics. Also, speaking of houseplants, I'm gonna like see if I can turn this because I want to show you how big Guillermo's getting. Well, or I'm just gonna completely knock it over. You like my ceiling? Hold on.
I'm loving the ceiling vibes.
The frozen ceiling vibes because everything disconnected. There we go. Okay, Willow, move.
Your ceiling has such good vibes.
Willow.
Oh my god, Willow has such good vibes.
I'm like, there we go. We're like adjusting finally. Do you see how tall he's getting?
Wow, you're gonna have to get another thingy.
Yeah, he's like huge. I don't know. I'm like, my plants are all popping off, but like Guillermo's getting tall. He's like, you can't even, he's on the ground and that tall.
He's got his whole GURRRLS out.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm plugging my fucking keyboard back in. So, because it's like such a delicate setup here, I shouldn't have tried to move. I should have known better.
Okay, but do you want to hear something crazy that's like really not important, but I just thought was interesting? Yeah. The picture of me looking like I'm about to send the Olsen twins to boarding school is my most liked or my most watched Instagram story of all time.
You're a queer icon.
I guess I am a queer icon. I guess dressing up like a country club lady is what the people want. I
mean, it's probably the same people that rewatch Gilmore Girls every other year.
True. No, true that. But I was like, oh, it's a lot of the gays that I almost dated that still creep on my Instagram stories. I'm like, shout out to Kyle Bryant.
Oh my God, Kyle Bryant.
No, did I never tell you about that? So when Kyle Bryant lived in Austin, he like lived in my DMs and he would always back out if we were supposed to meet up or whatever. And now
he did, I just forgot.
And now he's like married to that guy and they live, if not in Granbury, then somewhere Granbury adjacent.
Maybe they went wild and moved to Stephenville.
No, I truly think they live in like Benbrook or something.
Somehow less cool than Stephenville.
Because they're city living.
Because it's like, if you're in Benbrook, why don't you just fucking live in Fort Worth?
Oh, well, it's the black hole of Granbury, in that even if you get out, somehow you still end up living in Benbrook.
Ugh. Yeah, work has been like a shit show because, we had the gala last weekend, so I worked fucking crazy hours. But then today, have you watched Insecure?
I have not, no.
Okay, well, never mind.
But I did see Daniel Radcliffe's very erotic rendition of She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain.
Oh my God. Okay, like the most iconic Daniel Radcliffe moment of all time.
I just want to say I loved The Miracle Workers.
Yeah, I loved that show.
Or I guess it's just called Miracle Workers. But yeah, Steve Buscemi is God.
Better than Morgan Freeman. Like,
more believable. More believable. I believe that we live in the universe where Steve Buscemi is God.
Yes. Steve Buscemi is not the God we need, but he's the God we deserve.
He's the God we deserve, and things would make so much sense if that was canonically true.
I mean, it is. We get to just say that, right? We made it canon. Well, I was asking if you watch Insecure because it's less fun if you didn't, but I got to hang out with Jay Ellis today for a bit because his kid goes there. He's gorgeous. He was in the new Top Gun movie too, apparently.
Oh, that means nothing. That means absolutely nothing to me. But I'm looking him up. Hold on. We have this really cool thing called Googling it in a different window.
Whoa.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, he's beautiful. His wife is beautiful too, but.
Well, presumably.
Also, I officially have texted with Tom Morello's wife.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, Denise, who, by the way, this funny, weird story that I learned from listening to It's Always Sunny started a podcast, and I listened to a few episodes. Apparently,
okay, but I've seen that. That's just been advertised to me. Is it good?
Yeah, it's fine. But I found out that the nickname Sweet D came because Tom Morello's wife's name, it's Denise, and apparently he used to call her Sweet D, and it was one of those very LA things where Rob McElhenney and I think Charlie Day were at a party at Tom Morello's house, and
because of course,
and they we must have just absorbed it without thinking about it, because then they made the character's nickname Sweet D. And then apparently they found out that Denise and Tom were kind of miffed at them because it ruined his nickname for her, which
yeah,
I think is very funny. But I got to congratulate Tom for Rage Against the Machine being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So
fun. But yeah, well, I guess let's do the damn thing.
Yeah, because I need to be off by 7:30 because Eric is doing a Zoom audition at that time, and we don't want to be bumping up against each other. So we can do this in less than an hour 20. I believe in us.
I have so much belief. I have so much belief.
Hold on, I'm waiting for Willow to finish scratching, and then I'll tell you, because she just got the itchiest neck right before we started. She's huffing after scratching, it wore her out.
It's so hard.
She was snuggled up behind me so hard this morning. Her little legs were tucked under me, and she was spooning me aggressively.
Wow.
Let's just go. I don't know what she's doing now. She's slow motion scratching and wheezing.
Hello, and welcome to Wands and Fronds, the weekly podcast where we cover magic, herbalism, and more. I'm Nick.
And I'm Shannon.
And we are your co-hosts. And today I'm talking about the constellation Pegasus and Epona, the Celtic goddess of horses and horse-like stuff.
And I'm shout out to Epona, because I didn't think about it, Nick, but the new Zelda game comes out tomorrow. We're recording this on Thursday. We obviously pre-ordered it. So I know what I'm going to be doing this weekend. So,
and I do shout out Epona being the horse from Zelda.
Exactamundo.
Because honestly, a more popular Google hit than Epona the Goddess. Like, let's just be honest.
I mean, look, Epona does have her own song that you play on an ocarina, and there is no like globally recognized song on an ocarina for Epona the Goddess. So
that's fair. And
who's the real celebrity here? Well, this week we're sticking with that wildflower stuff because it's spring, y'all. Wildflower season's not done. I'm talking about evening primrose, which is a very Texan plant. It's all over North America, but I feel like evening primrose is like one of the flowers I think about when I think about like wildflowers that are around.
Oh, they're all over the place.
We had a lot of evening primrose, I feel like, in Granbury. Like, I feel like there were so much like evening primrose in like North Texas.
Well, you know what I think it is, if I'm being like super duper honest, and maybe you can confirm this for me, but I think they go for like poorer soil.
They like loamy soil. They love like loamy soil. They like recently it's like all wildflowers, right? They like kind of taking over decrepit places. Which
I was gonna say, speaking of, I mean, because we kind of have to get into it. With when did you feel magic this week? Because mine was absolutely bawling my eyes out. Not just when I saw it, but when I looked it up to send to you, that video of the girl and the donkey.
I mean, that was very emotional. But really, like, heartbreaking, but like in a good way, like in a sweet way.
But you could tell that donkey was so happy. And it's like, I don't speak donkey, but you could tell that was like happy donkey noises.
You're like, I don't speak donkey, but I understand donkey inflection.
Right, right.
I knew what he was getting at. So for me this week, it's actually like houseplant related because I had my gala last weekend at my job, which anyone who's ever worked a gala knows that means I fucking have been exhausted all week. And we have another large event tomorrow. But I had like this like moment on Tuesday night where I was like, okay, I'm gonna like do some houseplant care. And I was just like going through all of my houseplants and thinking about how big they've gotten and looking at all of my new growth and snuggling up on the babies. And I was just like, God damn, my plants, even though I'm exhausted, they're flourishing. And that felt magical.
No, love that. You were giving me the little tour before we hopped on, and everyone's looking so good.
Yeah, and Guillermo, my Monstera, is getting huge. So he's about to hit the point where I'm going to have to put him on rollers because he's getting very hard to carry back and forth to the bathroom to water.
Oh, poor babe. Getting too big for his britches, you know?
I know. He likes his showers. And I like it too because it's really annoying to try to like hand wipe down leaves when you have a fuck ton of houseplants. Which is why they get a shower. So I can like, now that I have a removable shower head, I can just like spray them all down. And then it's like, oh, look, we're having a like summertime hurricane in your tropical environment. That's what's happening.
That's exactly what's happening. But no, I wanted to talk about sort of the ethos of the horse girl because we actually come from a town with actual horse girls.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm like a self-identified former horse girl. I used to like ride horses every summer when I would go to see my grandparents in Odessa. I'll have to find it if I can remember to post it. Like there's a very 90s picture of me feeding a horse wearing a windbreaker, looking back over my shoulder. I love it. But big horse girl vibes.
But big horse girl vibes. But I would say no, it's like there's definitely two kinds of horse girls. And so there's the girls that are like really into like Black Beauty. And I saw, it's called The Unicorns of Balinor, which is one that I hadn't heard of, but it is from the year 2000. There's like a million of them. But the covers, I'm like, this is what I think of when I think of horse girls. That and Black Beauty, which is like kind of like the ultimate horse girl novel.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Texas is definitely like prime horse girl country. I'm like one of my favorite modern representations of the horse girl is definitely Tina Belcher from Bob's Burgers.
Oh no, and yeah, so I'm saying there's the horse girls that are like into they like fantasize about horses. And those girls are very different from the girls that actually like do horse stuff. So like the girls that like compete in barrel racing and, you know, like girls who actually like have and ride horses, very, very different vibe. And, you know, much love to them both. But I think sort of the nerdy girls that read the books about horses are the girls that are now witches. The barrel racing girls are all married to like Christian fundamentalists and have 5 children.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely a part-time having access to horses girl, so I have seen both sides of that coin, and clearly I am a witch. I spent most of my years reading about horses. You know, Seabiscuit had a very like challenging and complicated spot in my heart because I recognized how terrible horse racing was for the animals.
Yo, but, sure.
You know, lots of good horse novels out there.
I know, because it's one of those things where it's so pulpy, and there's like a million of them that are basically the same one. And we also have to like talk about the horse girl movies because they are all also very pulpy and all kind of follow like the same basic plot line. Troubled girl from the city has to go out to the country for some reason. Hopefully it's not something too serious, but it's just for the summer. But somehow she gets caught up in horse stuff and it changes her life.
Yeah, she turns it around for the horse.
Also, love the idea of, oh, that horse can't be tamed. You know?
Yep. That horse can't be tamed, but it will allow itself to be ridden by the right person.
It will allow itself to be ridden by the right person, but also it can be tamed if you are a 12-year-old girl from the city.
Well, yeah, because really they tamed each other.
They tamed each other, but also being a girl, a troubled girl from the city is the same as being an untamable horse.
Yeah, they're the same picture.
It's the same picture. Okay, so, but horse girl culture, okay, I think everyone who is not aware now has a bit of a reference for horse girl culture, so we're just going to roll right into Pegasus. So we have taken a little bit of a hiatus from doing constellations, but guess what? There's 88 recognized constellations. This segment's not ending any fucking time soon. So here we are. And we are keeping with this week's horse girl theme by picking Pegasus because we were like, what's the horse girliest constellation? It's Pegasus. It's the wing, you know, it's a horse with wings. Like that's every horse girl's dream.
Yeah,
all of that to say.
Lisa Frank was really servicing the Pegasus girls in the 90s, for sure.
Oh my gosh, right? So right off the rip, I want to talk location so we can kind of know where it's at. Unfortunately, in the Northern Hemisphere, you cannot see Pegasus right now because it is a winter constellation. So we can be on the lookout for that after October. But where is she at? So, and I'm actually excited about this Well, for a couple of reasons, but it is right off the ecliptic plane between Pisces and Aquarius. So if we know where the ecliptic plane is, that's where the zodiac is. That's where the sun and the moon go, right? If you were to draw a line where the sun goes, that's the ecliptic plane. That's where the zodiac is. That's 0 degrees if you look at a star chart. So, you know, that's an easy one to find if you're not familiar with any of the rest of it, okay? But sort of between Aquarius and Pisces and up a little bit. So, you know, if you know where those two are at, you know where Pegasus is at. But a lot of times Pegasus does get mistaken for the Big Dipper. Shout out to Ursa Major, also a wintertime constellation, because of the big square, the square of Pegasus. But it's not. It's not. That's the square of Pegasus. So they're not even that close to each other. So, you know, get your shit together, people who mistake Pegasus for the Big Dipper. Get your shit all together and stop pretending you know about stars, because you don't.
Raining down judgment.
So, but you know, that might not give you a lot to work with. But yeah, the big square. The big square is easy to find. It's like the 4 brightest stars in the asterism. And the big square has been a constellation in cultures around the world, because that's really the easiest part of Pegasus to see. And so those 4 stars are called Alpha, Gamma, and Delta Pegasi and Alpha Andromedy. But they also have the old Persian names Markab, Shiat, Alganib, and Alpharats, which, do not get me wrong, our current cataloging system is very sci-fi, with all the numbers and the dashes and the letters, and it's probably like really easy for nerds to use. But where is the romance in that? You know, where is the mysticism? Where is the mystery?
I mean, when you're saying names like Markab, Shiat, Alganib, and Alpharats, they sound like demons. Like, I feel like I accidentally summoned some demons.
Well, oops, I was just reading star names and I accidentally summoned some demons.
What do you gotta do? But no, those are such cool names. Like, make star names cool again.
Make star names cool again. I'm tired of all these dashes. I'm tired of all these letters. You know, if a star has really cool stuff, give it a cool name. Like, I'm always like, when they find really cool shit around other stars, and it's like, oh, this one's called like Henderson 27A. And it's like, bitch, what?
Yeah.
Can we
name do better?
Can we name stars shit like Demon Slayer and like shit like that again? Like, just
I mean, give them all demon names. Let's
give them all demon names. But back to the square. So the Mesopotamians did see the square, and they saw it as its own constellation, which they called the field, which, you know, very creative. They saw a square. They were like, the square is a field. Really groundbreaking word, Mesopotamians. You know, you're doing so good. You're doing so good.
Florals for spring. Groundbreaking.
Right. They were like, oh, it's a square. It's a field, like at a farm. But the Persians looked at that square and they were like, that's a horse and you all know it. And the Greeks were like, yeah, we're seeing the horse, but like very clearly it's got wings, right? Like, that's Pegasus. And that's how it happened. That's canonically how culture works. And because when one culture becomes dominant and the other one is waning, they all get together and have a meeting about what the stars and gods are named. You know, it's like when they change administrations at the White House. So like they all get together just one time and they're like, oh yeah, that's the horse. And they're like, yeah, no.
It's all the paperwork and cataloging and the unsexy behind the scenes for empire changes.
Right. But they were like, no, that's like, we love this horse idea, but we have this character, Pegasus, so that's Pegasus now. Great. Which is like a really Cliff Notesy version of the story. But I will be telling like the Greek version of the mythology momentarily. But before that, I did want to talk about location, because isn't the Aquarius Pisces cusp like horse girl territory?
Yeah, I was also like, we got water, we got air, we got clouds, we've got like cute little fishies and alien water bearers, and that is somehow equals horse girls. But
Somehow,
it just does.
I'm like, I could see, like, name me a horse girl that we were friends with in middle school, and I bet they have Pisces or Aquarius placements, or both. I mean, my God.
Yeah, I mean, I'd believe it. I'd believe it.
I also feel like, and I just have to say this, I feel like the Aquarius horse girl is the horse girl that knows the names of all the stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, could mount a Roman war horse.
Yeah. I mean, I feel pretty confident just to be that person about it. I'm like, I feel pretty confident that I could still saddle a horse, which,
yeah, that's cool as fuck.
It's fun, but yeah, you're totally right. I'm like, I could 100% saddle a horse. I do not know what all of the straps are called because I have a Pisces moon. I've got that Aquarius ascendant. So it's like, I look like I would know when I'm putting the saddle on, but my Pisces moon is like, JK, JK, JK.
It's like, I know where it goes. It's like, you know how to use it. You're like, the strappy thing goes into the hook thing, and then you buckle the thing. And hey, if it works though. You know what?
Exactly.
That's what I say. That's like one of my main philosophies in life, is that knowing how to do something and knowing all the words for it. I mean, like, knowing how to do the thing is more important than knowing all the shit.
I also just have to like laugh at the fact that it's like two people with ADHD that are like, I can do all this stuff, but I'm not gonna learn the fucking like vocabulary.
Right. Yeah. But also I think there's a point to be made that who cares if you can do the thing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really is like those who
nerds, like, that's too.
That's true. There's the like those who know how to do and those who don't know or know how to do those who can do. I don't know. I cannot remember how that goes. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and then you become a teacher.
And then you become a teacher. Something about being a teacher or doing things and like belittling educators.
Right. But yeah, I feel like Pegasus is at home with the horse girls between Aquarius and Pisces. But before we get into the mythology of it, I do have some fun facts about Pegasus, the constellation and region of space. Because that's really what we're talking about when we talk about a constellation. It's kind of just, I mean, really, if you look deep enough, like the James Webb Deep Field photography, there's like galaxies and stuff out there, you know, like we draw the square of the 4 brightest things we can see. We say that's Pegasus, but really it's a region of the sky.
And right? Sometimes those regions, like sometimes the individual bright points we see aren't nearly as close together as one might think.
They really aren't.
Space is wild.
So the first planet that was ever discovered outside of our solar system was discovered around the star 51 Pegasi, back in the early aughts, which is now confirmed as a giant, red hot, completely inhospitable place. But it is the first, so nah, suck it, other exoplanets. You know, if you're not first, you're last. So if you're not first, you're not first. So does it matter?
Yeah, you might as well not finish at that point.
Right. But the region of Pegasus is also home to a supermassive black hole. Really cool. One of the first spiral galaxies ever discovered. One of the oldest globular clusters that we can see. Yeah, so it's a pretty happening little spot in space, right? Also, it's like really close to the Andromeda galaxy, which is like the first kind of other galaxy that we ever saw, you know, because it's really close. Well, comparatively, but it's right there. Anyway, on to the mythology. So Pegasus was born when Perseus killed Medusa, right? So at the time, she was pregnant by Poseidon. And, you know, in this classic Greek way, babies jump out of her blood when she's killed. And, you know, one of them is a flying horse. And one of them is a guy. And, like, I guess technically he's a demigod, demigorgon kind of guy, but he's just the shape of a guy, right? Like, he's just shaped like some guy. And to be completely clear, that guy, whose name is Chrysaor, was not Hercules. So once again, a glaring inaccuracy in Disney's Hercules movie.
I mean, look, we probably should petition to get that horrible misinformation taken down.
It's just rude, okay?
Despite the fact that legit, it's one of the best Disney movies.
It's upsetting. It's so upsetting how good it is. You're not wrong. But so one of the things that does seem to be true about Pegasus is that he does get shuffled around as like this sidekick / magical mount to the top heroes, right? The heroes of the ages and the blah, blah, blah. And one of the major handoffs happens when, oh my God, this name, Bellerophontes slays the Hydra, which is actually funny because the Hydra is Pegasus's nephew by way of old Chrysaor and an Oceanid getting busy.
I just want to applaud you saying Bellerophontes because fuck yeah.
But Bellerophontes would be Pegasus's last hero because after years of adventuring and having outlived his own children, no doubt, because being the collateral damage of the top hero, it's very machismo. A lot of people out to get you. He commands Pegasus at the end of his life to take him to Mount Olympus, feeling that his status as a hero of the age would make him welcome in the gardens of the gods. Now, I just want to stop here and say, how many of the Greek myths are about man's hubris?
Yeah, I was about to say, wow, one of the things we know about the Greek gods is they really want to say get fucked to anyone who tries to compare themselves to them.
Right. So actually he was wrong. Because as they sort of make their approach into Mount Olympus, Zeus either, depending on the myth, zapped Bellerophontes right off Pegasus's back with a lightning bolt, or in the alternate version, he sends a gadfly to sort of tickle Pegasus's rear to make him buck Bellerophontes.
I mean, that one feels pervy enough for Zeus.
It does feel pervy enough for Zeus. But basically, he does fall off of Pegasus, regardless of how. And I think you'll all remember from our coverage of Hephaestus that it can take up to 7 days to fall back down from the top of Mount Olympus. Maybe even longer, because a hero has a lot more surface area to create drag than a baby. In my scientific opinion, it probably took longer than 7 days even, and many people value my scientific opinion as one of the top scientists studying people falling off of Mount Olympus.
I'm sorry, you mean leading world expert scientist in people falling off of Mount Olympus?
I did do the math of how tall Mount Olympus would have to be for a baby to take 7 days to fall into the ocean from the top. And that was groundbreaking research, which has been quoted in a lot of academic papers, actually. So
yeah, guys, I don't know if you know this, but Nick's kind of a bigwig in academia.
Yeah. So anyway, after that, Zeus uses Pegasus to hold his lightning bolts, which, okay, cool.
It's like you're turning Pegasus into a fucking pack mule.
I said caddy. You know, it's like, because I could easily see Zeus being the kind to be into golf, and I don't like anyone who likes golf. I'm sorry.
I haven't met anyone who's super into golf that I enjoy either. So,
and like, someone needs to look at the science of that, because there's something to that. There's something about that. Golf.
I think it's called wealthy people. Wealthy people are usually boring.
Yeah, I think that really sums it up, doesn't it? But basically, after being Zeus's lightning bolt carrier or whatever, years of faithful service, he gets to retire as a constellation. It's kind of like Zeus's top sort of consolation prize. So, not really the most interesting mythology around it. I think really the cool thing is, what if there was a flying horse? Let your imagination run wild with that one. But so some more fun facts about Pegasus. Chinese uranologist, which, did you know that a uranologist is what they call someone who makes constellations?
No, because it sounds like someone who's really into pee.
It does sound like someone who's really into pee. They see this part of the sky as the black tortoise of the north, and they view it as a very auspicious constellation to look at in matters of protection. And they do have a shrine to the black tortoise of the north in Kyoto, which I might just go check it out.
Can I just say, I love the word auspicious.
Me too. Doesn't it?
It's a great word.
It's a good word. And in Vedic celestial maps, this area of the sky is where the moon rests and has a nap.
I love that.
That's kind of nice. So yeah, Pegasus. She's
Woohoo!
Up there. She's
there.
Up there, and she's a big square.
She's up there. She's on a field. She is a field.
She is a field. She is a field, because they looked at that. Because someone looked at that square and they were like, "That's a horse."
I mean, that's how I often think about the first people to name these constellations, and I'm like, wow,
that's
very creative, buddy. So this week I'm excited to talk about a gorgeous little wildflower friend, common evening primrose, or Onothera biennis. Onothera. Wow, you're like great at the pronunciations, and my Latin's out here just like, I hate that we call certain plants common, because it feels kind of like calling the plants basic, which I don't love. But some of the other names that you'll see this plant referred to as are King's Cure-All or Evening Star, which are way cooler than common evening primrose.
Although Evening Star sounds like a newspaper.
I was kind of thinking it was giving me like Morning Star, like Lucifer vibes.
Lucifer. No. I get that. I just, for some reason, I'm seeing like an evening, like back in olden timey days when they would do a nighttime newspaper.
Yeah, because isn't the Dallas Morning News the Morning Star? Isn't that a thing?
No.
Or it was called the Morning Star.
You're thinking of the Star Telegram.
Oh, and they had someone had the Morning Star, though.
I don't know. I feel like that's very satanic.
I mean, anyway. It probably is. Okay, well, we're gonna not talk about newspaper names. In the Victorian language of flowers, evening primrose or primrose represents fickleness. They don't technically have evening primrose in the UK, but they have primroses, and I think fickleness feels appropriate for evening primrose, so we're going with it. It's a biennial. It ranges from 2 to 6 feet tall, although most evening primrose that I've ever seen tends to fall like on the low to mid-range side of that. I don't think I've ever seen a 6 foot tall evening primrose, although
I feel like that would be some like Alice in Wonderland shit. Like
yeah.
if I saw a 6 foot tall primrose, I'd be like, am I tiny?
Yeah, I'm like, did I get real small? The stems on these, they're hairy. They kind of have a bit of a purple tinge, but they're also really leafy. So when I look at them, they kind of, to me, almost have like a tarragon vibe, if that makes sense. Like the way the leaves look and how compact they are on the plant. But the flowers like are showstoppers. They're big, they're yellow, they're lemon scented. I'm like, these are very Nick flowers. They also open in the evening, and by the evening they mean like around 9 p.m. and then they close up by noon. I'm like, Nick, if you were a flower, I think you might be an evening primrose.
I think so. Also, primrose just makes me think of a twink for some reason.
Yeah, a very primrose.
Very prim, very proper.
So some wildlife will eat the roots of the plant. But the seeds are actually like a really important source of natural bird feed. These play kind of a very important role actually in the ecosystems. They're night blooming, so they're like popular with our moth friends. Texas does have hella moths, which is something that I didn't really realize until I moved somewhere else. But specifically, the evening primrose is the larval host for the primrose moth, but also the white-lined sphinx moth, which I'm like, I think it's a really epic looking moth. It's like one of the most abundant and common hawk moths in North America. I love a hawk moth. I think they're super dope. Hawk moths are also like the caterpillars have the horns on them. I hate that the tomato hornworm makes such a dope looking moth because I fucking have to kill them if I find them because they will eat all of my plants. But the moths are gorgeous. Anyway, so these these are like really important to the ecosystem. Again, deer or giant rats, as I would say, will eat older evening primrose. Hummingbirds can be seen sipping on the nectar in the morning. And then the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center database does specifically note that these have a special value to native bees. So they're a big deal. Like these are really good for the environment. You can sow unstratified seeds in the fall and give them like the winter to get all softened up, or you can stratify them yourself and plant directly in the spring. You know, these really do like to get a little chilled first. But when you put them out there, you just like barely cover them with soil because they do need light to germinate. You could do my seed sowing method, which is where I go around the patch next to my house and I just kind of take things and go woof and just throw them and see what happens. And that's my garden planting style. These would do really well with that type of situation. This plant does like sunny, arid locations with loamy soil. I mean, they're native to a lot of North America, but like they're all over Texas. So like think about that environment. Like they really do, they don't actually like need much water at all when they're in their vegetation period, like when they're not flowering. So they're very drought friendly. Like these are a really great drought friendly flower. If you do want to plant them, like be careful, do your research, because depending on where you live, these could potentially become invasive. You know, we don't like to kill out local flora. But yeah, seeds can be harvested from the plants between August and November. You can totally buy them commercially, like they are available. But again, just another note, don't forget, give it a Google, see if you have a local seed library, especially if you're somewhere like in Texas or like around Texas where things like this are native. Like I definitely like recommend going that route. So like even in LA County, in our LA County library system, certain library branches will offer like free seeds to visitors, like 3 seed packets, like once a month. So if you live somewhere where primrose is native, check out your library. You might be able to get the seeds for free. I also, like when I went down this rabbit hole, found out that there's a wildflower hotline report for Los Angeles that gets released every Friday, March through May. And it has like the details on all the different like gorgeous wildflower spots like across the county, which is like, how fucking clutch is this? It's available in like a print guide, or there's like a narrated audio version by Jeff Spano. He played FBI agent Tobias Fornell on NCIS. I'm like, how fucking Los Angeles is that? But I am stoked. Like, it's almost the end of May, obviously, but next year, y'all know I'm going to be getting that wildflower hotline report every fucking week as soon as it's available. Anyway, back to Evening Primrose. So the Cherokee, the Iroquois, the Ojibwas, and the Potawatomi are among several Native American tribes that historically have used evening primrose for both food and for medicinal purposes. So you can like super eat evening primrose. Like most of it is edible. So you can like cook and eat the young greens. You can mince the raw roots and like marinate them in a vinegar-based dressing for about 20 minutes and then eat them. Apparently they get like real radish vibes when you prepare them like that. You can cook the roots to like thicken a soup or a stew. The rosette leaves in year one have a mustardy taste. You can stir fry them. The flowers are totally edible when they're raw, so you can mix those in with like mild greens for a tasty, beautiful salad. I will point out they're, again, totally edible, but don't overdo it, because if you eat too much of it, it can cause some digestive upset. You know, it's like this summer that I became obsessed with eating frozen mango and then ate an entire bag one day and like puked. You know, moderation as always. So let's talk briefly about medicinal uses. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. Nick's not a doctor. This podcast is not intended to treat or diagnose anything. Please always talk to a doctor before you embark on any herbal regimens. In general, don't get medical advice from podcasts. So one of the most common things you see evening primrose in is like the oil. So like either in supplements of like the oil in a tablet, or you can find it like for topical uses too. I want to say like this isn't a plant that shows up in the herbalism sources that I typically turn to. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because I don't want to necessarily talk about herbalism uses for something that's not, you know, that I don't have access to good resources on. But apparently, the big push for it is that like the oil from evening primrose is super rich in GLA, which is like an unsaturated omega-6 fatty acid. So of course, like when you're seeing those omega fatty acids, like they're going to be recommended for women's health issues, things like PMS and menopause, because of there's like, if you don't have enough healthy fats in your diet, it can cause a lot of hormonal imbalances. And obviously, if you're a person with a uterus who menstruates, hormonal imbalances will show up in very regularly apparent ways that they don't for people that don't menstruate. So both oral and topical applications of the oil are also sometimes recommended for folks with eczema. I also saw some people suggesting it for people that have acne that are on trenatoin, because certain acne medications can like hella dry your skin out. And so evening primrose was suggested by like some like herbalists for that. But again, like I don't have info about this one in resources that I know and trust. So I'm really like, you know, do your own research, talk to your own herbalist. It's not something that I know a whole lot about and I could find in, again, the stuff that I feel is well vetted. But yeah, so that's generally what it's for. On to magical uses though, right? Like, okay, guys, it's a plant that opens at night and closes in the morning. Shocker, it's associated with the moon. What? It's also a plant that I've seen a lot of associations with like portals and opening spiritual doorways. I think that like you see that a lot in general with plants that are nyctinastic. So they're plants that open and close at certain times of day. So nyctinastic plants are different than necessarily like phototropism plants. Like, so some plants react to like the sun for when they're opening and closing, but things like evening primrose don't necessarily. So like evening primrose is up there with like poppies. Poppies do the same thing where they'll open and close at certain times of the day and night, regardless of whether or not the sun is up. But with like morning glories, if you have a super overcast day, you might have noticed that like your morning glories don't open until really late in the day. It's because they're relying on the sunlight to tell them when to open and close. So anyway, you see, I think a lot of stuff with like portals and doorways and like liminal kind of work, you know, some maybe work with like dark goddesses, especially if you have plants that are nyctinastic. So it's also a 4-petaled flower though. And with fours, like 4-petaled flowers in particular, and like plants that produce flowers with 4 petals, I often end up seeing stuff with like balancing associated with it. So like balancing energies, like, you know, healing work, things like that. But it's also, if like numerology is your thing, like the 4 petals also can correlate to like 4 and the home. So if you want to think about balancing energies in the home, evening primrose could be one to work with. But as far as like all of the healing and balancing, also just because it is like associated with the moon and the moon is like very tied to menstruation, I'm like, I think this is a really strong candidate for a plant to work for on like period magic. I'm just gonna say it. Like, if you do work around your menstrual cycle, I think evening primrose is a good friend. I also love the idea of doing like a really healing, balancing bath while you're on your menstrual cycle and floating evening primrose flowers in it. I think that'd be real cute if you're someone who likes to take baths during that time of the month. But yeah, I think overall, this is a cool plant because you can like eat most of it. It's really great for all of the like cute little birds and all of the moths and all of our like friends. Fuck the deer eating the old ones, but deer will eat anything. So, you know, what are you gonna do? And it's got like cool like liminal magic associated with it. I'm like, if you're a witch that lives somewhere where this grows, like go get buddied up to some evening primrose because it's pretty dope. So my sources today, the Ladybird Johnson Wildflower Center database, atkinsarboretum.org, but specifically they had this project. It's called the Indigenous Peoples Perspective Project, where it's an arboretum going through and doing like different plants from the perspective of like the like local indigenous peoples. Of course, good old Wikipedia, magicalspot.com, lots of random Reddit threads. You get the picture. That's evening primrose.
I just want to say, as someone who lives in a place with lots and lots of evening primrose, it's one of those things where it's like, if you can go out into a field of evening primrose, it's doing a lot of great work with the wind.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, it does, like, if you are out in one of those fields, it does smell divine.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's one of those things where you never just see a patch of it. It is literally either an entire field or nothing. So
yeah, it's a go big or go home for sure. And I think that they like, I love a citrus scented flower. Like, because I feel like that's one of the things that's so special about evening primrose is like you really do get that like lemony, like almost like lemon verbena-y kind of vibe. And I feel like it's just so unique with like flower smells. So I'm very team evening primrose.
love her. And she's still out right now. So this was the time of year to do this segment.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we want to do baby asks before we do Epona?
Yeah. Rate, review, subscribe. Email us.
Email us.
Yeah. Hey.
Hey. All right, y'all. Well, so again, this is for the girlies who are really, really, really into Black Beauty as children, because we're doing Epona this week as well as Pegasus. So, but does that sound familiar? Pony, Epona, get it?
Great. No, those sound totally different. What?
She is the Celtic goddess of horses. And yes, that is also the name of the horse in Zelda. So please do not at me for not mentioning it. I mentioned it. Moving on. But kind of referring back to when I felt the magic this week, she's also the goddess of donkeys, mules, and ponies, which we really need to figure out what the criteria of what is and is not a pony is, because that is so vague, y'all. We've literally had hundreds of years to figure this out. When does a small horse qualify as a pony? Is there not a species of horses that are ponies, like Shetland ponies? I'm very confused.
We had a pony. My grandparents had a pony, and because they're very funny, his name was Big Tex. And I just remember that Leslie was riding Big Tex one day because Leslie was the baby of the family. So, of course, she was on the pony.
Of course.
And it's the only time I have ever seen a horse, for some reason, got startled and fucking bolted. And Leslie, literally like a Looney Tune cartoon, seemed like she was floating in the air a second after Tex took off and then fell on the ground. And it was one of the most fucking hilarious things that ever happened in our childhood. Not for Leslie, but for me and Morgan.
That's iconic, and I can literally see the scene in my mind's eye. And I'm sure y'all were cackling.
Yes, because my sister and I, Morgan and I, we both have that laugh.
Oh yeah.
We have a cackle. I've embraced it as an adult, even though I was once told that I had a very ugly laugh by someone that was supposed to be my friend. So,
incredible. But Epona is not only really cool, she's also really ancient. So she was originally a goddess of the ancient Gauls, aka the continental Celts, right? So you just kind of have to look at the Gaulish Celtic progression. So they think they come from the steppe region around Russia and Uzbekistan, which is big horse girl energy. These were people who dealt with Mongols and everything else over on that side of the world. But there's even speculation, that the chalk horse in Britain, which is a geoglyph from around 1500 BC, could be representative of an Epona figure. Not confirmed, that's speculation, but it's speculation by people who know more about this than me, so good speculation, I would say.
Educated speculation.
But what we do know is that there's stone and bronze statuaries in the Celtic parts of Europe going back into the hundreds of years BC of the horse lady. So think Cybele, but with horses instead of lions. That's what a lot of the statuary of Epona looks like. Sometimes a mare and a foal motif, which is actually later used for depictions of Rhiannon and her son in the Mabinogion. Which they also kind of speculate that the Epona figure factors into the Rhiannon story because Epona might be a psychopomp in her own right. But we're going to talk about that a little later on. But it does connect to the Rhiannon story, so I've got to plug it here. But here's where things get really interesting, I think. So at the time of the fall of the Roman state religion, there's evidence right across the whole Roman Empire that the Romans had adopted Epona worship themselves. And this I do find interesting because unlike Cybele, who was this goddess that was passed down from previous traditions through the Greeks to the Romans in sort of her original form, it's like they picked up Epona as almost like a spoil of war, right? So, and I think this really exemplifies this almost like anti-dogma that the Roman state religion had, because you have these Gaulish Celts who were like the top horse people in Europe at the time. So like our words car, carriage, and chariot all come from the Gaulish word carros, which, little linguistic fun fact for you. But this is kind of the trail that we were able to follow, right? And so the Romans were like, most of our gods are doing a really good job, but we're not the best horse people. Let's see what Epona is all about. Like, clearly these Gauls know something we don't. And this was the only time that a Celtic god was adopted into the Roman pantheon, by the way. And we're talking full goddess status. They had a temple to her in Rome. There is a feast of Epona noted in some archaic calendars, which would have been December 18th, which I find interesting that it would be sort of at the ass end of Sagittarius season. This horse girl festival. 1 and 1 aren't always 2, but sometimes they are. Okay.
I'm like, let's bring it back.
Let's bring it back. But so here's the thing about Epona too, is that yes, there was a temple to Epona, but most of the artifact remains of Epona worship come from Roman stables. So they would have these sort of nooks in the horse stables, which is where they would keep their little statues of Epona, and the cavalry would all pay their respects when they would kind of go get their horses, right? And the most common, and I think this is interesting too, the most common offering was roses.
How cute.
Which they still put a garland of roses around a horse at the end of a horse race.
The more things change.
Right. But I mean, that's why you do that. And I mean, I guess also, maybe it's just easy to make a wreath of roses. Did you ever think about that? There always seem to be wreaths of roses. Just something to think about.
I feel like it's just, they're very, like, roses are very sturdy flowers.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe they're not tasty to the horses too, so they don't feel like.
Oh, they're not going to try to nosh.
Maybe they're not going to try to eat it.
Yeah.
Lots to think about here. But roses, so you would offer roses to the Epona statuary that you would come back from your battle as a Roman cavalryman, right? But so why were the Romans so impressed by Epona? And it is because when they were fighting with the Gauls would send in men to die before they would send in their horses. They like revered the horses so much that the Romans saw Epona as this such a powerful goddess that they would rather kill their own men than send the horses into battle.
And that feels appropriate to me.
And it does. But there is kind of this thing with Epona, because she's also seen as this sort of fertility god. Like, really, I mean, once you get into like war and fertility and horses, it's kind of really, we've opened a whole umbrella. This is like sort of like a catch-all goddess. But I think it's fair because horses would have been a huge part of this world that people lived in. Like, that was that's how you got the mail, that's how you got supplies, that's how commerce happened. I mean, like, horses were important.
Yeah, they were kind of like the spoke in the wheel of that era.
Right. Well, and speaking of which, that's why the Celts were so rich in gold. There's so many golden Celtic artifacts from Gaul, from Germany, from all the old Celtic places, because they had horses and they were really good at horses. And so they were able to go long distances and they were able to trade with people really far away. And that's why they were a world power at the time. And that's why Rome was so jealous. And again, the only goddess they adopted from the entire Celtic pantheon when they did sort of defeated that part of Europe was Epona. And that's really the story. Because what? Obviously, we know that Epona is a horse goddess. So if you have horses, that's Epona. But I think, you know, for the witches, I mean, how many witches out there have horses? I think that's really like a niche thing in the 21st century, truly. Like, I mean, even where
none of us have, because so many of us can't afford to even own homes, let alone land.
Let alone a horse. I mean, you could get 2/3 of the way there, but then you still have to shell out the money for the horse.
Horses are expensive.
Oh, right. And expensive to get.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not even like like you need all the land and not to mention the food, just the horses themselves are.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so they were really impressed that they would send men into battle instead of horses. They were like, Epona must be a bad bitch. And they spread it throughout the Roman Empire because guess how they spread the Roman Empire itself? On the backs of horses with cavalry soldiers. I mean, it really just makes sense that this was way more widespread than like worshiping Jupiter.
Yeah. I mean, it literally tracks. It tracks along with the travel.
It tracks along with the travel. But so Epona as a psychopath is depicted in a lot of sort of funerary art of Roman soldiers because that was one of their primary gods that they worshipped. So it makes sense that they would kind of see her as someone that would be guiding them through the other side, right? And one of the things that she's depicted with sometimes is keys to the underworld.
Interesting.
Like a ring of keys. Which just the symbolism of that. But, you know, also to just have that ring of keys.
Well, and it's just interesting because it's like the only other goddess that I know of that's like super heavily associated with keys is Hecate.
Right. But, okay, but sometimes they did kind of say that they saw, and these are Roman sources talking about GURRRLS, this triplicity of the goddess, and that sometimes Epona would be depicted as this woman very confidently and calmly riding a horse with 3 birds, and the 3 birds supposedly represented the 3 aspects, because again, you have this fertility aspect. She's often seen carrying a cornucopia. And, you know, this fertility, you know, this like human fertility aspect, which I don't know why the ancients were so obsessed with like horses as a symbol for like good family values, but maybe it was just like the way that the mom horse like leads the foal, or maybe it's because the baby horse can like get up and walk right away. That is one of the like cool things about horses, is that they just get up when they're born.
Yeah, I've been able to like see a couple of foals born, and it is like really cool. It's like kind of disgusting, but also really cool.
Which they do draw a lot of comparisons between what they call the vengeful Demeter and Epona, because Epona, or vengeful Demeter, is sometimes depicted as like the great mare, which is actually what Epona means in Celtic. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you know, how much cultural mixing is there before everything is the same thing?
Yeah. It's just interesting to me to think about like how many aspects of certain goddesses you can see in Epona, because it's like we're talking about the triplicity, we're talking about like keys, we're talking about like ravens and crows and the Morrigan, and it's like, is every goddess somehow tied back into Epona?
Well, it's one of those things where like, if you follow the human migration from India, which is where all of the people that are not in Africa came from, I mean, you know, everything just kind of branches off from there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's like, I guess if you're looking at what we would call quote unquote like Western mythology. It's like once you get back to the Gauls, that's kind of like they're the ones who are the root of a lot of these cultures whose mythology we talk about.
Right. But I think Epona's really cool. I think it's one of those things where it's like, as witches, we have to kind of read between the lines because we're not cavalrymen and we're not taking care of horses. But I do think there's something that's really, I think, spiritually correct about this story of like the people who are best at horses, we should worship their horse god. And just kind of having that openness that I think is a good lesson for everyone.
Yeah, it's like they did that really well, so we're just going to take it. But instead of just taking it, you could adapt and learn, but you know.
But I mean, even with the just taking it, like the mindset of these are the best horse people. Fuck whoever our horse god is. We're just gonna start using theirs because clearly she's the best.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know. I love that energy.
Game recognized game.
Game recognized game.
They say. Love. Love, love, love. Well, let's get into the tarot scope. I felt like this was very appropriate when I drew Leo this week because Leo and horses are proud and majestic, as is the lion. But then I fucking drew strength for y'all, and I was like, wow, groundbreaking. But I'm using my Herb Crafter tarot deck, and the thing that I like about the way they depict strength is, number one, it's got a garlic, like garlic's tied into a knot, but then there's also like honey that the garlic is soaking in that you can see, and like this corner here, and then there's like a honeycomb. So I feel like this deck is actually the perfect one to get strength for you spicy little Leo bitches, because the way that strength is interpreted in this is that it's like you have it in you, but it's really important to like bring like sweetness and kindness to that strength. You know, I think it's really easy to be like bold and boisterous, and we love that about you, Leo. But sometimes like putting a little honey on there can really help smooth things over, because your strength doesn't have to come at the expense of others. And I think that the honey there is really helpful.
Well, it's almost like garlic is naturally strong already. You kind of have to bring the honey yourself.
Exactly. Bring the emotional honey. You know, and I always love the like crafting with the cards. So in this one, I love that the first crafting suggestion was to wear a garlic amulet. Let it just hang over your heart. I'm like, if someone's wearing garlic IRL, they are definitely a witch, but I cannot imagine going out in public and the year of our goddess 2023 wearing a fucking garlic amulet. People are like, what, are you afraid of vampires? But also, again, like sweeten intensity and conflict by making an immune boosting garlic honey. So I don't know if y'all have done this before, but it's fucking dope. Like garlic honey drizzled over pizza. Like,
it sounds like heaven on earth vibes.
It is heaven on earth vibes. But anyway, strength for Leo, because I guess today was all about just things that make sense and are not always super surprising, but that's okay.
Right. It's like evening primrose being associated with the moon and a square being a field.
Exactly. And girls liking horses.
And I think, you know, maybe a fun way to round out our discourse about horse girls is that it was presented in a TikTok recently that the opposite of a horse girl, or the male version of a horse girl, is a knife boy.
Oh man.
And I see it, and like not in like the 2023 way where it's like bring in a knife to school to like do something, like in the 90s way where the kid who was a Boy Scout would bring in his like Swiss Army knife for show and tell and be like, look, it's got scissors.
Yeah, exactly. That's the vibe. I like it.
So something to think about there.
Food for thought.
Food
truly.
for thought. But what do we say to all the horse girls out there?
To all you horse girls, blessed be bitches. Bye.